I know that there is an inner peace, an inner presence in everything. I know that this presence responds to me. I know that everyone is an incarnation of God, that the living Spirit breathes through all. I recognize this Spirit and it responds to me. I realize that everything is alive, awake, and aware with Spirit. I commune with this divine presence. The Spirit within me reaches out and communes with the Spirit in everything and everyone I contact. It is the same Spirit in all, over all, and through all. I have a deep realization that I am surrounded by an infinite law which receives the impress of my thought and acts creatively upon it. I am conscious of my ability to use this law to direct it for specific purposes for myself and others. There is nothing in me that can deny, limit, obstruct, divert, or in any way hinder my use of this law. It is within my own mind because God is right where I am. In calm confidence, in perfect trust, in abiding faith, and with complete peace, I let go of every problem as a problem. I receive the answer as fulfillment. Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in beautiful downtown Fresno, the heart of Fresno, which is the heart of the Central Valley, which is the heart of California. Welcome to the show today. It's a great day, and I'm glad to be here, and I hope you're glad to be here also. It's a good day. I opened with that. It's from a book entitled How to Use the Science of Mind that was originally published, I think, in about 1950. It's still in print. You can get a copy of it, and I highly recommend that you do. Even if you are an old-timer in Science of Mind, it's a powerful little booklet to keep with you a good deal of the time. It's a great reference. So last week we were talking about, or actually I was talking about, the idea of changing the world by changing ourselves. And it's an idea that Dr. Holmes, I believe, firmly believed in, that to try to go out and change the world without doing our own personal work first was futile and basically ended up being counterproductive. That once we learned about the truth of ourselves and we began our journey, the journey of inner change, the outer expression of our life also begins to change. That we don't necessarily have to go out in the world and be some kind of an activist warrior type of person to change the world. All we have to be is the truth of who we are, and the world around us changes. That's a concept that a lot of people find a little difficult because we're used to having a direct relationship with change. In other words, change comes about only when we actively participate. But that's not necessarily true, particularly when we create change from a spiritual perspective within ourselves. Now, I read that that's a treatment that's, and I'm going to go back to that chapter in that book that's on technique. And the reason why I decided to talk about this today is because if we're going to change ourselves, where do we start? How do we start? Well, I want to go back first to something I read last week, and then I'm going to add a couple things, and we're going to kind of pick it up from there. I read the final conclusion, the end of the general summary, just the one paragraph. I'm going to read it again because Dr. Holmes was very adamant about this, and you see this repeated in a lot of his writings. He says, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. And that most definitely is truth. Because to practice it means that we have to step out in faith in our day-to-day experience. We have to decide that we're going to empower ourselves with something that we can't see. We have to accept it on faith. We have to believe in it. We have to have conviction. And we have to realize that we spend a lot of time in our day-to-day life experience denying it exists because the world has told us so, at least on the particular level of understanding that we're talking about in science of mind and spirit, new thought, religious science, however label you want to put on it. There's a power and a presence for good in the universe, and it is available to each and every one of us. But we have to open that door ourselves. It's a gift that was given before we were created. It awaits us. It is a potentiality. It is goodness. It is godness. It is abundance. It is peace, harmony, love, beauty, and all these things. And not one of them is going to show up in our life if we fail to open the door that exists within us. It's done unto us as we believe, and that's where we begin with the door and the doorway. Matter of fact, where do we begin? You know, you look around your life and you say, well, gee, you know, I've had this kind of life, I had that kind of life, I have these or those kind of beliefs. Where do I, do I have to, is there something I have to do? Is there a step that I have to take first? And I'm just going to read one quote from the book called The Science of Mind, but it is something that we see, again, written throughout. God, I had all these pages marked and I can't get to the one I want. It says, there is nothing in the universal order that denies the individual good or self-expression, so long as that self-expression does not contradict the general good, does not contradict goodness itself. There is nothing in the universe that denies us the right to be happy if our happiness does not deny or interfere with the general good. The universe remains unlimited through the whole world, though the whole world has suffered. And he says we should start right where we're at, nowhere else. You say, well, right where I'm at is a place full of problems or limitations or difficulties, or you add your own words to that. But the truth is that when we do start right where we're at, and it starts with a choice, when we do make that choice, all of a sudden we have basically projected ourselves into a whole different pathway in our life experience. But how do we do that? Dr. Holmes, in his little book, How to Use the Science of Mind, under the chapter titled Technique for Practice, and I will refer back to this throughout the talk today, but he says, unless there were a method for spiritual mind practice, then such a practice would not be scientific. Unless there were definite technique, its use could not be taught. In metaphysical practice, we arrive at this conviction through the process of thinking. The process itself is not the conviction. It is the road that leads to it. When Dr. Holmes was beginning to develop his theories on what ultimately became science of mind, religious science, it was the early part of the 20th century, and the first book he wrote is a little book called Creative Mind, and then he followed it up. I think the second book might have been Creative Mind and Success. But in Creative Mind, and it's in print, you can get a copy of it. I'm going to pull up a copy that I had here on my computer. I want to read something to you. He says, there is only one power, but we use it in two ways. Now, this is back in 1918. He's talking about the one power, and that we use it in two ways. If we use it in ignorance, like most of us do, it ends up usually causing chaos and confusion in our life because it does respond to us. When we think chaotic thoughts, when we have thoughts that we work back and forth in our mind, good, bad, judgment, gossip, the news, whatever, we got all this stuff going on in our mind, and the law is responding. It's kind of like a ping pong game. Which gets the most emphasis? Which gets the most power that goes forth into our life experience? And so we throw up a bunch of stuff, and we deal with a bunch of stuff, and we wonder why our life is what it is. In one sense, those people that are goal-oriented kind of have a step up because they've already got the idea within mind to begin to focus it in certain directions. But what if we took and decided to focus our mind in a spiritual direction? What if we decided that really what Dr. Holmes was talking about at the beginning of the 20th century, that New Thought pioneers were talking about, an immanent and transcendent God that was everywhere present, a source, a life force, a power, that it was here and that it was available, that it was expressing as life, in life, and through us as our individualized life. What if that was true? And those men and women in the early days, they acted on it, and as they acted on it, they began to see demonstrations. And the demonstrations they began to see were really amazing in all sorts of areas, in health, just physical health, in life experiences and conditions. It was pretty incredible. One of the things that Dr. Holmes used to say is that an individual, one man or woman, aligned with divine principle or God is a majority. And that's a pretty awesome statement. But it's also a very true statement that when we, and as we begin to align ourselves with divine principle, as we align ourselves with God, and we've talked about that, and we'll continue to talk more about it as we go on through the weeks, but as we align ourselves with principle, there's a law that responds. It responds, when we say it responds at the level of our belief, we can get kind of caught up in the idea of belief. I got to believe, and all this, and it can get, our ego and our willpower can kind of cloud the issue. What we're talking about in belief is not only the belief in God, the belief in good, the belief in the eternal and immanent presence of God, but in the expression, in our moment-to-moment life experience. That if we claim a belief, but we're still, wrapped up in the gossip of the day, the news of the day, if we still allow our emotions of upsetness, worry, doubt, fear, anger, hatred, rule a part of our day. And, we kind of go through this during the day. In that sense, we're not practicing what we claim to believe. If we say we believe it and we're not practicing, then we have to evaluate something. There's something not outside of ourselves, but there's something within ourselves that we have to take a look at. Going back to the Creative Mind book that Dr. Holmes wrote, under the chapter entitled The Same Power Used Two Ways, I read you the first paragraph, but I want to read you this. He says, we trust our own word. Wait a second here. We trust our own word because we first know in whom we have believed, and that's where we went with that. But now this, in the next page, he says, like produces like. It creates like. If we could see our thought and take a picture of it and of our conditions, we would see no difference. We cannot make affirmations for 15 minutes a day, he says, and spend the rest of our time denying the thing that we are affirming and affirming the thing we have denied and obtain the results that we seek. If I want to create abundance, harmony, health, peace, love in my individual life, and I wrap myself up after, and I do my morning meditation, and I do my affirmations, and I say them throughout the day. But if the in-between, the majority of time during the day, I'm wrapped up in the day's news, the hatred, the tragedy, the incredible chaoticness of it, where am I placing my power? What really am I creating in my life? And why is it that I'm not seeing the results that I want to see? And that's where we have to stop and realize that we start right where we're at. But we have to recognize we are at right where we're at. We have to begin there. And in that beginning, that's the time we take a look and we take stock of our individual life experience. Oftentimes, I tell people that the best way to do that is to sit down with a pad and a pen or pencil and just note the things that are going on in your life. Things that are good, things you're grateful for, things that create worry, things that are destructive or limiting, and lay it all out. What you're going to do once you get this list, and generally if you take time, and it's nothing you're going to do in 10 or 15 minutes, I suggest you do it over a period of days. Put a tablet in the middle of a table, and just as you walk by after your first initial list making, as things come up, put it down on that list. Give yourself a couple days. Work through it, and then come back to it and take a look and see what it is. Allow yourself to kind of see the picture that your life is reflecting back to you. if you got a lot of chaos and a lot of worry, if there's things in your life that you just really feel so strongly that you have to oppose with energy and anger because someone else has done something or threatens to do something, or you know something, or whatever else it is, how does that work into the concept of being in alignment with divine principle? And we often say, because our egos can get very caught up in that, we say, well, it's righteous what I'm pushing for. Might be righteous, but it may not be right for you at this place and time. If it's not something that you can get behind with a loving consciousness that produces peace and harmony within yourself, maybe it's something that needs to be addressed, but addressed in a different way. Maybe we have to transform our mind, if you will, before we come back and look at that thing. Because that's when we will begin to truly see change in the world. And the change does begin with us. We're going to go to our first break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Linda Lee Kane is an author of fantasies, thrillers, contemporary fiction, and children's books. Order a book by Linda Lee Kane on Amazon or on lindaleekane.com.
Hi, I am Bobby Bliatsu. I have lived in the Central Valley nearly all of my life. I am proud of our community, but believe we need better leadership in Washington, D.C., and believe healthcare is a basic need for families here in the Valley, and that's why I'm running for Congress. I've put together a website, bobbyforcongress.com, that explains more about my family story and my values. I hope to earn your support and your vote. Thank you. Paid for and approved by Bobby for Congress Committee.
At Miracle Realty, we've been providing premier professional residential sales and property management in residential and commercial property for years. We manage single-family homes, condominiums, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, office space, and much more. No matter what experience level you have in property management, Miracle Realty strives to make your experience as stress-free as possible. Serving Madera and the surrounding areas, we use the latest technology and provide top-notch service. We're a trusted and reliable name in residential sales and property management with the experience to answer any questions or complications that might come up. Give us a call today or visit us online for more information.
Discover retirement living the way it's meant to be and live your golden years to the fullest with Rose Meadow Manor. Rose Meadow Manor offers assisted living, memory, respite, and hospice care. To learn more, call 559-840-1991 and visit rosemeadowmanor.com. The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find The Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. And today I'm talking about the concept of creating a technique, something that you can do in your life to change. And like I said in the last segment when I read Dr. Holmes, we have to have a process, something we can do, and we have to have a method or technique of doing it in order to move forward. And this becomes our spiritual journey. And the spiritual tools that I've talked about in shows past become part of this process. But in the beginning, we start right where we're at, wherever we're at in life. No matter how daunting that may be, when you start right where you're at and you make that choice, you begin to, if you will, pull the curtain back so you can see a clearer, brighter, more productive and abundant day. So he says here, and again, I'm reading from How to Use the Science of Mind. He says, the spiritual practitioner does not make a demonstration by merely saying peace where there is no peace. He or she makes a demonstration only when confusion is converted into peace. That confusion takes place in mind. Only when that confusion is cleared do we begin to see forward movement. Now, there are methods of affirmative prayer treatment that are taught in religious science and science of mind, and it's a very, very powerful tool. And we will be getting to that at some level at some point in the show today. But for right now, let's understand a couple things. I want to talk about, first off, practitioner. If you're a science of mind, new thought person, if you go to the centers or churches where new thought, science of mind, religious science, or any of the other incarnations of new thought are taught, you are a practitioner of sorts. You've either claimed it already or you're going to claim it at some point. And that's what I want to talk about. Because in order for you to move forward, not the professional practitioners that take client patients and work with them and treat for them, but in order for you to move forward, in order for you to create the greater good in your life, you can start right where you're at, and you can start today. And you don't need an extensive lesson. You don't need a library full of books. What you need is an understanding of a couple of very simple things. And we've talked about some of those things, but basically, if you understand that God is immanent, everywhere present, transcendent, if you understand that God expresses as you, through you, and is really, you are it expressing, and you are at a point in your life where you can access the power of God because God is you. You're not separate from it. So as we talk about the power of God, and that can be pretty awesome if we're not used to considering the idea that is available to us. So we'll start right where we're at, and we'll go, okay, that's a nice concept, but maybe that's a little bit beyond what my mind can grasp. And we've talked about beliefs and how trying to change beliefs can be daunting and problematic, but we don't need to worry about that as we get started in our own spiritual journey. What we want to do is just begin to do, and it's in the doing. That's why when I opened up and I read from the final conclusion out of the Science of Mind, it's in the doing. And you don't need a library, you don't need a certificate. What you need is a choice that comes from within you that says, I'm a creation of the divine presence. Therefore, I'm important. My life is important because God created me. My life has some aspect of it that is destined for greatness. Whether I understand it or know it or not is not important. Now, that greatness may be just in living a life as an example for children or family or friends to see, or it may be something bigger and greater. But it only stays in a form of potential if we don't take the time, if we fail to recognize that there's a greater truth in our life. And I get excited about it. It's why I ended up becoming a minister. It's why I take time each week to speak with people through this show. I don't claim to be the ultimate end-all in knowledge of science of mind or Ernest Holmes. I know what I know, and I know that I'm continuing to learn and watching my spiritual life unfold, and that's exciting for me. And as I get excited about it, I like to share it with you. You can change your life. You can change your life. That's a promise. It's not a promise I made. It was a promise made a long time ago. We know that when the master teacher said, it's done unto us as we believe, that's exactly what he was saying. But he wasn't the first, and he's not the last. And we hear it today. But we have to understand that in order to do that, we have to take that first step on that journey. That first step is to say, okay, there is a technique. We don't have to worry about the rules of the technique, because ultimately the technique comes down to just doing and affirming and doing it consistently. Once we move beyond that, yes, there are methods that we can pick up that help, but in the opening moments of this show today, I read you a treatment that Dr. Holmes wrote, and it's in the book, How to Use the Science of Mind. Refer back to it. You can play it back and listen to it. It's one that you could use. I would recommend that you use it not as in reading it as a literal, like you're reading a list or something like that, but use it as an inspiration. See what he's saying in that prayer, in that affirmative prayer, and see how you can say things in similar ways that apply to you in your life, realizing that you're going to start right where you're at. And all right, starting right where you're at, you're probably not going to knock down any great walls to begin with. But so what? The idea is to do and to do and to do. And as, like I talked about last week, as we put a drop of clear water into a glass of muddy water, every drop of clear water that goes in creates a little bit more clarity. Now, you're not going to notice it drop by drop. I can't tell you how long it will be in your process as you work on your technique. Let it be your Sam or Joseph's or Susan or whatever's technique, that works for you. Matter of fact, in the early days of Ernest Holmes' studies, and as he was teaching people, one of his firm beliefs was that the technique was what was personal to the individual that was working on it. What we're looking for is the goal, and the goal in this case is to bring ourselves into alignment with principle. So when we think about bringing ourselves into alignment with principle, what are we thinking about doing? We're thinking about creating a loving consciousness within ourselves, peace within ourselves, recognizing beauty within ourselves, seeing the divine principle in all that is at the center of all that is, the source of all that is, knowing that we are divinely guided throughout our day. And in that guidance, we are also guarded when we stop and take the time. Knowing that we need to take the time each day to quietly go within. Take the time that you decide, that works for you in the way that works for you. But where you can quiet the mind, where you can go within, whether this is in a mindfulness meditation or whether it's in a walk on the beach, whether it's the commute to and from work and you manage to somehow put out of your mind the chaos of what's going on in the traffic. You will have to decide what works for you. But there is something that works for you because you were created to do the work. And that's part of our beginning, our process. We start right where we are, but we know that we are right where we are because God brought us to this point. When I say brought us to this point, it's not all the calamity and all the issues and conditions and effects we're dealing in our life. This point is the point where we decide and have decided to make a choice, that we realize that we can make a better life for ourselves. Forget the rest of the world for right now. Just work on yourself. And as I've said, as you begin to create a brighter light within you, the rest of it's gonna evolve. It's the way it works. I think Dr. Holmes really believed that New Thought, science of mind and spirit in particular, but New Thought in general, was the answer to the world's issues and ills. When he looked out at the world and he saw all the chaos. Last week when I read that and he talked about how humanity had failed and that we needed to recognize the greater truth and search and bring that greater truth forward. I think that more than anything else, more than creating science of mind, more than creating an institute, I think my personal belief is that was what moved him forward, was the idea that we being humanity, aligning ourselves in a oneness, a unity of all, recognizing the truth of who we are, we could create, and ultimately we will create, a world that is so awesome that no one can really even begin to grasp or glimpse what it will be like. But it's out there, because God's in here, and it can't be any other way. God is perfect. God's creations are perfect. Our understanding is where the filter, if you will, lies that has filtered out all the perfection because we have allowed our consciousness to embody the limitation and so on and so forth that has kept us limited. But we're moving forward. This is a great time in so many ways. There's so much good, but we have to recognize it. We have to be grateful and thankful for it, and we have to decide to move forward. We're going to take our time and we're going to create our life. We look out in the world and we see the abundance there. That abundance is not there in limitation. That abundance there is in infinite abundance. We look out in the world, we see that there are things that need to be done and cared for and changed, and we know that as we change within ourselves, that the world itself will change. Those are powerful things. We're working on a technique. We're working on ourselves. We're working on creating a better environment within ourselves so that the environment without of ourselves changes also. We're going to take our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Let Senior Care Authority help you make the right choices for your loved one. Senior Care Authority will meet with you and provide guidance to help you find the best independent living, assisted living, or memory care, offering 6-bed home or large community. Senior Care Authority will help you navigate a complex healthcare system and ensure you get the proper care for your loved one, and the service is free. Visit seniorcare-fresno.com or call 559-900-2076. Vote for Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council in District 3. Over the last decade, Miguel has collaborated with residents, public institutions, and business leaders to improve public safety, increase education access and success, and increase workforce training and jobs. As Fresno City Councilman, Miguel Arias will build upon this track record of success. Learn more at miguelariasforcouncil.com.
This message is paid for and approved by Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council 2018.
Lease or buy this modern 2-story Spanish-style building with private offices, open workspace, 2 restrooms, and a break room. This commercial office building is located at 10 East Olive in the Tower District. The floor plan is designed for easy conversion, and all interior walls are movable. Parking available in the rear in a fence-secure lot. Call Mike Briggs Properties at 559-486-6758 or visit MikeBriggsProperties.com. Voir dire, An Oath to Tell and Seek the Truth by Santiago Camarena, depicts the vicious cycle of drugs, crime, and incarceration. It argues that the media, politics, and our laws systematically contribute to this cycle. Get your copy of Voir dire at voirdirestory.com. Connect with Dr. Alan Hedberg. Watch Doctor Teach Me to Parent on CentralValleyTalk.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Listen to The Psychology Report anytime at thepsychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. Visit booksbyhedberg.com and order a book for your personal growth. And join the conversation on twitter.com/Alan G. Hedberg.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. So I was talking about this concept, putting it into practice, making a choice, being in a consciousness of recognition that there's a greater truth in the world and that I am a part of it, that I am being you and all of creation. The divine principle is everywhere present. There's no place that it's not. That's an understanding that we have to come to in order to grasp the power and the presence that's within us that is available to us. But once we do, the infiniteness of that power at some level is available to us. Our issue, and it's individual, is understanding the availability and the power of it. But to the extent that we can embody that, to the extent that we can utilize it, to the extent that we can put it into practice with belief, we will see life demonstrate for us, and it's very exciting to watch it unfold. We don't see spiritual mind healing as prevalent in the world today. Allopathic medicine has pretty much got a lock on that, and they do what they do, and they do it well. But there was a time in this country when spiritual mind healing was pretty much running neck and neck with what medicine was doing at that days, and oftentimes it was a much more positive, result-oriented way of creating healing in your life. But I was rereading Dr. Fenwick Holmes' biography of his brother Ernest, and he was talking about when they were in Los Angeles in the early days, and they had set up a sanitarium there for treating people, that there was a period of time where there was a very bad flu epidemic in Los Angeles, California, basically probably throughout the states, but he was talking specifically about that, and how people were dying, and how at the clinic people didn't die. They were being treated with spiritual mind healing treatments, and how people that were practitioners from that that sanatorium as they went out and they worked in the community, the positive healing results that were there. That speaks a lot to the power that's available to us when we recognize that power. I don't think we emphasize that as much today as we should in New Thought, but there is a power and a presence that absolutely heals, absolutely. And when we think about that, we have to think about that we're not talking about the little things. We're talking about all things. So as we come to New Thought, as we come to religious science, science of mind and spirit, as an individual, yes, we can go through all the training. Yes, we can become a practitioner and maybe go on beyond that. But more importantly, we can become an individual practitioner in our own lives. That we can work to create the power in our, to not create it, but to utilize the power in our life for good in our life, creating a better life for ourselves. And we can do it for other people also. We don't have to be certificated, but we can't do it if we don't know how. And we won't know how unless we practice, because it's only in the practice that we begin to see the demonstrations. And if we don't see demonstrations, we don't know if there's any truth to what we're saying. I mentioned this last week. So practice becomes important. Practice is the thing that seems to be the issue that hangs most people up. They like the idea. They like the concept. Boy, if I could create this kind of good in my life, if I could create healing in my life, if I. But when you talk to them about applying it, putting it into practice, well, I would, but I don't have time, or it's confusing, or, and I talked about some of the ors last week. Listen, you can start right where you are. You can move forward. There's nothing in the world that can stop you if you decide to do it. And everything you need is available to you. I don't care if you live so far away from a New Thought center that if you drove all day you couldn't get to it. All you have to do is go to the internet. And if you're watching this show, you have internet availability. There are books that are out there. There are books from the founders of New Thought that are out there, powerful books, books that will teach you how to use techniques that work for you in particular. And I'll get to a little thing that we're going to talk about that we can do for ourselves today, but I wanted to share a couple of quotes with you. One of them is, our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. If you let your doubts own you, they will own your life. Your doubts are very intimately tied to your story. We talked about the story last week. That's something you got to let go. That was a quote from Shakespeare, written however many years ago that he lived and walked the face of the earth, but that was known at that time. And here's another quote that I wanted to share with you today. It says, I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. Leonardo da Vinci. Been around a while. Doing is where it comes down to. You know, if you watch this show, and if you've gone to, it's out there on YouTube. We have New Thought Talk with Rev Steve on Facebook. You can go back and catch most all the previous shows. I think they're there at some place. It's the internet. It's all out there somewhere. And like I said, there's many other individuals and teachers and books and stuff that's available. Nothing's going to happen, though, if you don't do it. Technique doesn't happen unless you do it. And technique is what I'm talking about today, really, is just starting. I think it was Mark Twain that said that all success starts or happens once we get started, something to that effect. We have to get started. You have to do it. So make up your mind today, right here, right now. You're watching this show. You're going to commit. What are you going to commit to? How about something very simple? How about committing to a daily affirmation, just a single affirmation to start with? But do it every day. Do it multiple times a day. First thing in the morning, midday, last thing at night. And the power of affirmations, let me share again, going back to, let's see if I can find it. I didn't mark it. Maybe it's in this book. Anyway, the power of affirmations in Science of Mind is where we start. What do we affirm? Well, what's important to you that you can marginally, just marginally, encapsulate in your imagination as something that you can experience. What do I mean by that? If you are experiencing a certain type of limitation in your life and you can't see beyond it, that's probably not where you want to start with. But if you're experiencing something in your life that you can imagine, and the imagination is powerful, it's important. If you can imagine that you can see beyond that within your mind, then write your affirmation as if your goal is already, I'm happy, I'm healthy. You know, make it as simple as you can, but something that you can just affirm. And the thing is, in the affirming, it's not like we're waving a magic wand that something's just going to go poof. But what we're doing is we're actually, and this is where some of the science of this comes in. This is where there's some powerful stuff that goes on in our brain when we begin to, commit and do it every day. We actually change the wiring in our brain. And 3, as we begin to repeat these affirmations over and over and over, and maybe they start with just a rote repetition. But as you get into it, begin to say your affirmations with feeling. Try to feel as if it's already so. And as you do that, as you've committed, as you've been consistent, and you work through this, all of a sudden, at some point, you'll be saying your affirmation, and as you're working on creating that feeling, you're going to feel it. And you'll know that you're feeling it. And you're 90% there at that point. When you get to that point and you speak your affirmations, and it's good to speak them aloud. Don't just say them silently. And if you live someplace where maybe to begin with or whatever, it's a little embarrassing, and some people get embarrassed as they start this process, find a place where you can be alone and quiet. If nothing else, speak your word quietly so no one else can hear you, but speak it aloud so you can hear yourself as you speak it. Speaking your word is important. And you speak it and speak it, speak it, and all of a sudden one day as you're speaking it, you really begin to embody the feeling that I'm whole, perfect, and complete. And I'll use that as an example. And all of a sudden you feel like the whole beingness of you is whole and perfect and complete. All of a sudden things change, and they change dramatically. I am perfectly capable of handling whatever in your life. I am worthy of having a good family experience, whatever. You start with what works for you, but work it. It works if you work it, but you have to work it in order for it to unfold. But you can do that. And that's the wonderfulness about this. That's also what has kept us pretty much in the closet, in darkness. Because one, in the world today that tells you everything is a physical reality, and that's all there is, that you're just one peg in a great big field of pegs, that you have no value in particular unless you happen to really be lucky, basically. And none of that's true. See, you are really important. You don't have to be lucky. You were created really important. But you have to believe it. It's done unto you as you believe. So if you don't believe it, it's time to start working. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. What are we renewing? We're renewing our belief in ourselves. We came in, believe it or not, we came into the world with that as our belief. You ever watch a baby? Their whole world revolves around them in their knowingness. And little by little, they learn that they're not that important. They have to wait, that they're second. And hopefully that's the worst of their life experience, but it can get a lot worse. But no matter how worse it is or how bad it is, it can be changed because we start right where we're at. No matter what our story is, we can let it go because we start right where we're at. And starting right where we're at with a commitment and just something simple that we can do. And using our will not as willpower, but using our will to focus ourselves. That, I'm going to do this. And if you begin to slip away, you let your will bring you back to doing it. You don't use your will in the doing. You use your will to focus your mind to do. And as you do that, it's in the doing. And it's amazing. And I'm just, today I'm on this rant, I guess, about the amazingness and the power of God in our lives and what we can do. I've seen some really good stuff this week in people's lives unfold, and I know that it can unfold in your life. and all you have to do is make a choice to get started. And if you have already started, if you are already in New Thought, and you find that the majority of your New Thought time happens to be in either the classes you're taking or the Sunday experience you have, pick it up. You know, it's like I read from Dr. Holmes' book, Creative Mind. We can't do this 15 minutes a day or 1 day a week and then spend the rest of our lives in chaos. Joel Goldsmith called it practicing the presence of God, and some people are a little intimidated by that. How about just practicing the presence of goodness in your life? It's essentially the same thing, because God is good. And on that note, boy, we've blown through this. We're at our third break time, so I'm going to see you when we come back for the last part of the show. See you.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-454-0655. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-454-0655.
Learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010, and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Build the Reedley College Center for Fine and Performing Arts by making a donation at scccd.edu/donate.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. The recession's over. It's now safe to sell your home. Call Mike Briggs Properties.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
It's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. And I've been focusing on technique without really getting specific about technique, other than to say, start it. It's a process. Do it. You can start with an affirmation. Most importantly is consistency and, what else did I say? Consistency and dedication in doing it. And, well, you know, you watch this show. Actually, consistency is doing it. But I didn't really outline any particular method, and there's multiple methods out there. But I'm going to talk about, because I said I would at the beginning of the show, if you're new to New Thought, if you're not a person that is familiar with science of mind and spirit, religious science, there is something that was developed by Dr. Holmes it's not exactly unique, but it's kind of unique to religious science, and that is a technique of affirmative prayer. And as you begin to grow in consciousness, as you begin to see demonstrations in your life, if you want to embody a greater way to utilize this whole godness, if you will, that's available to you, it's a very, very simple, profound, powerful technique. And Dr. Holmes broke it down into 5 different parts, and there's other people that have broken that down into other parts, but I'm going to keep it simple with the 5 parts. The first part is the recognition of God, the divine. The second part is recognition of our union. The third part is what we call the declaration. That's where you declare. We don't ask God, hope for God, plead with God. If all the good that is available to me, potentially is available to me, then what we're doing is declaring that we're ready, open, and receptive to it. The fourth part of this is the thanksgiving part, the gratitude part, and the fifth part is just letting it go. Because if we keep it attached to our mind, if we worry, we have doubt, and so on and so forth, basically we're still tied to our old thought, if you will, and hoping that God will answer 911, hoping that maybe we're worthy. Maybe God can't do it, so we can figure it out for him how it gets done. So, going back to the first segment, when we say we talk about the recognition of the divine principle. When we get to this point, as we're particularly new individuals to this particular concept, it's not just making a declaration that there is a God. It's not saying that there's one mind or there's one life, and you'll hear that repeated oftentimes. But as we do it, what we're seeking to do is create a consciousness within ourselves of a realization of this as the reality of what is. In other words, when I speak the word and I say there's but one God, when there is but one mind, that mind is God. That mind is my mind now. When I speak the words that there's one life, that life is God. That life is my life now. You know, if I just do it in rote, I'm not really accomplishing anything. But as I'm doing it, if I take a kind of a meditative consciousness, if you will, and we begin to feel the beingness of this one principle, this one power, this one presence, and it's here and it's real, and the greater the reality that we experience within ourselves as we're saying it, the more that we can feel it, embody it, and know that it's true, know that it's true. You know, then we're getting to that point. But the next thing is, it's not just enough to know that it is and know that it's true, but we also make the declaration that we are, and it is. And there is not God and, there's not one with, there is God expressing through as. That when I say that there is one mind, that mind is God, that mind is my mind now, or life, and that's my life is my life now. That life is God expressing as me. Again, getting to that inner understanding, that inner feeling, that inner knowing, that God, Spirit, mind is expressing as me. I am principle, I am power, I am, and I am the I am. And there's no separateness. It's an awesome thing. We all can do it. We all have the capability. We all have the raw material, if you will, and it can be done. When we reach that point, then the desire of our heart that we're working on in this particular affirmative prayer that we're doing, this affirmative application of our truth, if you will, in the divine principle, we speak it as if it is so, it is done. That the good is here, that God's gift is here, that the absolute is here, that the potential is the reality, that there is an equivalent. We create what we call a mental equivalent in our minds of the what is, and we know that the law of correspondence provides the where at. And the where at is when we and it arrive at the same place in space and time, and it does and will happen. And as we know that, as we believe it, it is done unto us. It's done unto us as we believe. If we believe that something's going to happen tomorrow, tomorrow's always going to be there. Tomorrow. At some point in time, we run out of tomorrows for ourselves. Tomorrow will still be there for everybody else. And whatever it is that we've been trying to bring is still going to be out there tomorrow. We don't go there. We're here now, in the present in the present. And then the next step. This is an amazing step. It's easy to say thank you. It's easy to say I'm grateful. But this step embodies so much more than that. Because when we get to this step, what we have to know is that what we're thanking, what we're grateful for, is already so. You cannot thank God for something that you don't believe God has done yet. You can say, I'm going to thank God. When it arrives, I'm going to be very thankful. But you're not you're not embodying the true spirit, if you will, of thanksgiving. So when you get to this point and you say thank you, it's thank you for the what is. I have accepted the what is, the gift that you have given me. I am grateful, I am thankful, and thank you. And you can do that. It's amazing. It's very powerful. And it also shifts something in our mind when we get to that point. We want to get to that point with a knowingness, not a hope, not, we don't want to be filled with doubt at that point. We want to know, and we want to know that we know that that is so, and I am grateful and thankful for that. And then, like I said, as I introduce this, we let it go. We get our fingers out of the pie, so to speak. There's a power and a presence for good that's available to each and every one of us. It knows. It does. All we have to do is create the receptive field for it in our acceptance and our belief. We are created in the image and the likeness because we are God expressed as us. If we are, in fact, God expressed as us, and I believe that to be so, then what part of God is not expressing through us? What part of God do we want to limit in our life? Where do we want to tell God that you're good enough up to this point? In realization, that's what we've done. If we recognize that we are God expressing as us, if we realize the truth of what the Master Teacher said so many years ago, that I and the Father are one, and he wasn't talking specifically about himself, he was talking about humanity. If we accept that what he said, when he said that all that I can do, you can do, and more, that's the power and the presence that exists within you. That's the God within you. It is there. It is potential. It is awaiting. It is more intimate than something that no matter how much we can imagine it, it's even more intimate than that. It's an awesome, powerful thing. It's our life that was the gift given to us. And that life was given to us to live life abundantly, to live life greatly, to express with all the goodness that God gave us to express in this life, and to express it maximally. The last couple of weeks, I don't know what it is, but as I've come to the show, I really have been a little bit more excited about what's going on in the world, not because because I don't watch the news. I don't read the news. I don't do news because I do God. But I know, and I have an inner expectation that we are at that point that Dr. Holmes talked about so many years ago, that the principles of New Thought, whether we bring them into the world under the banner of New Thought, or whether they come into the world under the banner of whatever, it doesn't really make any difference. Because it's not about names or labels. It's about consciousness, truth, and about the divine principle expressing itself worldwide in such a way that all of humanity expresses the good that God created for us. I think that's the thought I'll leave us on this week. I'll see you next week. We'll move forward from here. So as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, that the love of God enfolds you, and the power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you, because truly, wherever you are, God is there. There's no doubt about that. And if you happen to be in Fresno, I'll see you on Sunday at the Spiritual Awareness Center, 1470 Van Ness. Blessings, my friends. See you next week.
CentralValleyTalk.com